Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra,
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people.
associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked.
and sometimes what didn't,
You will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts.
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Hey, listeners of the Software People Stories podcast. We're so excited to share with you that our 100th episode is just around the corner. We invite you to join us as we hit the century mark and celebrate. We invite your comments as listeners of our podcast to either write into us or leave us an audio recording. As always, our email is podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.
Our guest this week on the Software People Stories, Harsha Mutt, shares his life and career story in conversation with Sivaguru. With a sense of curiosity and loads of pragmatism, and what I felt has been forged in several fires of experiments and experience, Harsha, a Bangalorean, talks about his early predictable life to taking his first flight out and starting a whole new life. He's probably a pioneer of sorts in terms of rapid development and demonstration of working software, who then took on several roles, some as part of a classic career path, and others that gave breadth to his experience. He says that fearlessness in youth perhaps helped dealing with the ambiguities of work and transition. A person of many firsts during his nearly 20-year stint in Infosys, he talks about turning points in his life from returning to India to joining a new company, and then deciding to be a venture capitalist to being an entrepreneur, using a trekking analogy for that experience. And for one who's had so many experiences, transitioning to a coach seemed natural. And now, I'd recommend that you listen on to know how it all happened.
Welcome to the Software People Stories, Harsha. This has been a long time since we've been trying to catch up, and I know that you have had a very, very varied and very interesting kind of roles that you've played through your career. We can start with your origin story in your own words.
Sure. Thanks, Shivguru. Thanks for this opportunity to have a discussion with you. And it's a strange coincidence that we met at the Indian Institute of Management Bangalore campus a few months just before the pandemic broke. And that is the cause for this conversation. Like, you wanted to understand a little bit more about me. So let me take a few minutes, Shiv, right? Firstly, again, thank you. I am a Bangalorean. I studied mechanical engineering at UEC in Bangalore, and I had an interest in business because my father used to run a printing press. While I was in high school, I used to help him during the school holidays, and that's what got me to do my cost accounting program in the evening, along with my mechanical engineering. So by the time I came to the final year, I had already finished my intermediate in cost accounting and completed all the courses in final, but did not take the exam. So that was my studies. And after that, like every engineering student, right, I started looking for jobs, writing every test possible, right? ONGC to CCAT to IIT entrances and so on. Ultimately, I was lucky to get recruited at Infosys. Infosys was a small unknown company at that time. At that time, again, I had two offers, one from Micro Bosch as well as Infosys. And somehow I took a decision, a fork in the road, took a decision to join Infosys. And I think I can't repent that decision now, looking back. And I think what I can reflect on the Infosys days is that I was recruited for a fresh software engineer trainee, right? The panel of 8 people were there to choose this one individual, which is unlike today. And 3 of the board members were there, and it was an interesting discussion. And a lot of the questions in my interview was about CNC programming and NC, which were my electives in mechanical engineering. And post that, I ended up getting into commercial software. I think the first thing I can remember about Infosys is, apart from the recruitment itself, was the rigorous training. We used to have classes from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., right, in a small classroom. 8 people. The courses taken by the founders of the company on
Uh-huh.
operating systems, computer architecture, databases, file management, programming languages, COBOL, etc. So though I'd learned Fortran in college, I think here I had to learn COBOL. So this was very rigorous. After the classes at 6 a.m., you are expected to do homework. And the philosophy that the founding team there had was that if you give somebody 200% of work, right, to deliver, they would at least do 100%. So the pressure was quite intense, and it was a great way to learn stuff, especially where somebody had not studied computer science in school, right? So that is the first thing I remember. And then a lot of the exercises we had to do. And the first system I came across, or the first computers I worked on, was Data General MV4000 and MV8000, the mid-range series. Yeah, that was quite nice, and those are the first big machines in Bangalore, which were there at the Micro campus. So we did all our what you say projects, right? Whatever we learned, we had to experiment, write the code, and then debug it, test it. So all of this was new things for me. So it was quite an interesting way to learn stuff quickly. And as a person, I'm a constant learner, and I've been trying to learn something every day all through my life. And so this was good, and so that certainly helped. And post that, instead of doing work in the manufacturing systems, which I was recruited for, I ended up working in the commercial software. So that's what I keep telling people, that you study something, but you end up doing some other work, right? So as long as you take that with the right spirit, right, you will certainly do well. And within the first 3 months, though I did not have a passport, I had to get a passport quickly. And then I was shipped off to the US to do some consulting projects like most other software professionals in the 80s. And there I got an opportunity again. This was the first transition I had in my life, right? So moving from a day scholar who was at home all my life, right, cycling to college and back, now to getting trained in a upcoming software company, and then being sent across the world. And here I had to move from Bangalore to the US. And so before that, I had not even taken a flight. So it was a different kind of experience. And the first time I was having what you call a hostel days, right? Staying away from home, staying with colleagues, staying with friends, learning about people from different cultures, right? Not just the Western culture, but even people from across India itself, right? So I was interacting with them much more closely than during my college days. So this was a great opportunity to learn software, the software industry itself, right? So we had to interact with customers, write software, design systems, implement them, see the outcome, rather all in a quick fashion. What we call agile today, we did that in the late 80s, and concept to implementation would happen in a few weeks, unlike the multiple stages we do today, right? Because we literally were working very closely with the client, so there was not that amount of documentation needed, right, Shiv? So it was all on the whiteboard, and then, right, we just got into putting things into production and fixing if something went wrong. So it was all heartbeat kind of support, and it was a very good way to learn, I think, about software itself. Yeah, so that's how my career started. Moved from mechanical engineering to software development. And then in software itself, I moved across various roles, higher up in terms of the hierarchy, moving from a developer to a project leader to a project manager to becoming an account manager, a business manager, and ultimately a practice head or a delivery unit head. That was a vertical kind of growth. The other things I had to do was moving from a software developer to play roles in terms of training other people, right? As a trainer and as a recruiter, trying to build your teams. So these were kind of the horizontal functions I had to do as well.
Okay.
I hope this gives a perspective in how I started.
Yeah, definitely, Harsha. A couple of questions triggered by this is that both from your college days as well as getting into computer science, whether it was in engineering or even you said you did cost accounting, they're all very precise, right? Everything has to add up and then everything has to balance, a lot of numbers, quantitative stuff.
Right.
And again, algorithms when you get into, say, software development. Now, from there, when you said your first transition of moving from, say, Bangalore to the US, there would have been a lot of ambiguities, right? Whether it is dealing with people or even developing something very quickly with the users very close to you. Still, probably a lot of things are changing. Was that something that you enjoyed, or was that something that you found strange?
Actually, Shiv, I think your question is how did I handle that ambiguity or the change in context? I think I was quite young at that time, right? 22, 23, and there was no fear, no inhibitions in that sense, right? I was enjoying the ride, so it was an adventure, right? So there's nothing like feeling bad or saying somebody's asking you to work on a weekend, and there's no such ill will. And even if a customer said it takes a month to do a project, we would finish in 2, 3 weeks. So it was like there was a lot more energy, eagerness to learn, I would say, right? And then it was like it was not at all work, right? It was play, right? When work is play, I think time also passes quickly. And I think that again, probably what happens is some of the customer folks or the local staff would feel bad that when I take 1 month to do something, these kids come and do something in 3 weeks, right? Are they here to take away our job? So except for that kind of not fear, it comes worry in them, right? So it was all a good. So it was a holistic thing. Apart from actually the work equals play, I said no. I also got an opportunity to travel a lot, play basketball, play soccer, right? So that way there was ample time because I think that because the overheads of what we do in a software project today were not there. So he did not have overseas calls and a lot of the conference calls, training, right, workshops, right, which we are doing today as a part of normal life, right? Those are not there. So you are doing just whatever is absolutely needed for a system to work, right? And that you did quite efficiently. So there was no stress as such, and I did not feel bad or anything, right? It was a good learning, and I wanted to do more. And some customers actually at digital, they used to ask, when I give somebody 8 hours of work, you come back after 4 hours and say, give me more, right? And this is unheard of. So it was like, it was fun in a lot of respects, right? Because you're learning new things, not necessarily from a perspective, build up resume value or get higher salary or whatever. It was just the sheer thing of trying to do something new, right? Trying to learn something, create something new. And I think there was no, I think some of the kids today would say, I don't want to work in a support project. I don't want to do testing. There is no such baggage, right? To say, I don't want to do this. So again, today the message to a lot of the youngsters is first 3, including my daughters, is first 3-4 years of your career, you have to do whatever is given to you. Right? So that we did with, or at least I did along with the other team members with the right spirit. So there was no hindrances to our performance.
You also had transitions from Infosys to other organizations as well as being an entrepreneur. You want to share some of those transition experiences?
Sure. Shiv, I was in Infosys for 20 years and I resigned just before I reached the 20th anniversary. And my last day was actually the 20th anniversary. And just to give an incident, during my 19th year there was a strategy workshop done by the founder of the company, Mr. Murthy. And I think he had asked each of us some rigorous assignments to do before the 3-day residential program. I think one of the things is if you were the CEO, what would you do? And as a CEO, you have to be honest about yourself. What are your strengths, weaknesses, and so on, right? I think one of the things I had noticed or I had written in the question, which I'd asked, please tell me about your weaknesses and what will you do about them, right? So my comment was that I have spent 19 years in one company, seeing similar people, right? The same DNA in a sense, right? And everybody knows me, I know everybody. So it's like a whatever is a safety net kind of thing, right? It's you're under an umbrella or a big shade. And basically, one of my weaknesses is that I have not seen any other culture, and I've seen only one culture. And I don't know if I know the real world, right? So if you come out of that cocoon and go into the real world, you might have a challenge. So that's what one thing I had listed there. So I just thought
Very
I cite
interesting.
that. And again, even Mr. Murthy called me a trailblazer because in Infosys I had a number of firsts, right? I don't have that list here, but just to name a few, I ran the first $1 million project, right? The first offshore project for General Electric, right? And I became the first business manager. I was asked to head the first proximity development center closer to the client locations outside India, right? This was in Boston. And I was the first person to become a permanent resident in the US. So from the technology team. So a lot of things were there. So he said, you have a lot of things going and this is not your weakness. So I think this staying in one culture inspired me to look beyond and understand how other companies operate. And I probably would not have joined HCL because one of the drives, when I moved back from Boston to Bangalore, right? One of the things I decided to do, because I had stayed away from India for almost 15 years, I wanted to Indianize myself. So first thing I did was I bought a Mitsubishi Lancer, and then I started driving on Hosur Road from Adarsh residency to Infosys city. And I think I did not get a driver. So that was the best way to get used to the,
That would have been a very brave decision also.
I don't know, because that median was there. So you hug the median on the way and take a calculated risk. And being in a car is safer than being on a two-wheeler or right? Something. So I used to leave home at 7:15, be in the office by 8. It used to be a 20-minute commute those days. And then finish off the email by 8:39. By the time team comes in by 8:39, right? Your calendar is free almost, right? To do the rest of the day and attend all the calls, meetings, etc. And leave the office at 5, get home by 5:30, 5:45, and start the calls from 6 all the way till midnight. So that was the life. One of the calls, one of the days I did not have a call driving back, and one of the headhunters called me and said, "There's a great opportunity in HCL. They're looking at somebody like you, and right, you'd be a great fit." And he gave the usual story. And probably if he had not called me, we would not have switched also, right? And then I said, I'm not interested. Then he called after a couple of days. And then, so that conversation went forward. Then I went and met Vineet Nair twice in Noida at the HCL headquarters. And post those conversations, it got me thinking. And then I said, maybe I should go and see another culture. So this was, I think, like another fork in the road. It was not a bad decision. It was a lesson in life, though I learned a lot more things. So I think it was in that sense a good decision. Seeing different ways companies are run, right? So I could actually see 3 differences between the 2 organizations. One was I worked with a team from the South Indian culture, and here I was working with a company headquartered in the North. The second difference was in Infosys, I was doing mostly technology work, right? In HCL, I had to do technology as well as operations and infrastructure. Operations in the sense of BPO and or back office operations. So that was a thing. And in Infosys, I was doing mostly Indian and North American clients, mostly. And here I had to do global clients, be it Australia, New Zealand, Sweden, right? Mostly Germany and UK. And so this gave a different perspective also from a overall learning. And I think one other significant difference which helped me from a leadership development is in Infosys, all my direct reports were younger than me except for one lady. Whereas in HCL, everybody was elder to me except one person who was a gentleman. So that again was working with a younger team to a team who is elder to you, right? I had to adapt and do what was needed.
Interesting. But how is your transition to being an entrepreneur? I remember
Yeah,
visiting you in the Lookup office also once.
sure. Yeah, yeah. I think that's again, it was like a chance thing, right? And after 4 years at HCL, I decided to leave. And when the management asked, "What will you do?" I said, "I want to become a venture capitalist, right? And I want to invest in the startup world, and I want to." At that point, I didn't know what I would do. But then, post resigning, I studied all about what is venture capital, how does one do a startup, how does one do a investment, and so on. After leaving HCL, I met a bunch of people who were setting up a seed fund, right? So I got the concept of what they were doing. And one of them was setting up a technology firm to
Okay.
do something interesting in the media space, right?
Mm.
So I said, and he said, if you want to join me, you're welcome to. So I said, yeah, I can take a risk at this point in my life, right? So there's nothing to fear for or save for, right? So I said,
Mhm.
let me take the jump. And
Mm.
then became part of the startup. And this was a company called Lookup Media. So it was trying to do a lot of great things.
Yeah.
Eventually, unlike the previous podcast you heard about Insta Health, right? They had a successful exit. We had a not so successful exit, but like any project and any company, right? The startup started, did a lot of things well, a lot of things not so well, and
Mm.
eventually it has come to a closure, right?
Mm.
But I think one thing looking back is it's a lesson in life, right?
Mm.
Where you figure out how you interact with people, how you
Yeah.
hire people, how you fund companies, right? How you take care of customers. And unlike a large corporate like an Infosys or a HCL, where there's a lot of right backing and right. So here you have to be agile, you have to take your own decision, own risks, and not always things will work out, right? So it was another experiment, and I think it was a great lesson in life, right?
Yeah.
I would say, and
Plus,
there I got to, yeah. Tell me, sure.
yeah. Plus, you guys are probably a little ahead of the time at that time. Because now you find OTT platforms and cutting the cord and all those concepts are more accepted
Correct, correct.
of people
Yeah,
having a streaming media over the net.
sure, sure. I think it was a little, I think, early in terms of timing. But I
Mm.
think more than the timing, I would say, I think being more practical, right? So being practical in the sense, keep releasing a product and then keep evolving.
Evolving.
So there
Mm.
are two schools of thought, right? When you do product
Mm.
development, you'll have a ready to go big bang kind of product and then launch it so that nobody can beat you. The other is try different releases and then, right?
Mm.
Like an iPod came, then an iPhone, then you have an iPhone 12 now, right? So you
Mhm.
keep evolving every year. So here because of certain market conditions, other things, we try to change our vision itself, but then we try to do all at once. So which again because it was a costly affair, right? So
Yeah,
unless
yeah.
we had a backing of a huge MNC or a huge company,
Mm.
it had its own set of challenges. So I think I do
Mm.
agree. And I think when I was in Infosys, I got an opportunity to do a residential program at Harvard Business School, a
Mhm.
program for management development. It was a 10-week
Okay.
program where
Mm.
I stayed on campus with 160 other people from 35 countries.
Oh,
So there
okay.
again, the reason I mentioned this is there were a number of case studies we did at Harvard, where I
Mm.
think similar technology companies earlier, right,
Mhm.
had got the product ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody did the same thing 3 years later and they were extremely successful.
Successful.
So I just remember that timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
And though I had done all those case studies, right, when actually you are doing your own project or own startup, right, you
Mhm.
fail to realize those things
Mm.
because when I spoke about my early part of my career, right, there was no stress,
Mhm.
no pressures, everything was fun, right?
Mm.
Here it tends to become the opposite. Everything becomes stressful,
Okay.
and you really can't see the right lining clear, right? So that way, maybe maybe if I had used some of those learnings to say we should delay a little bit or
Yeah.
do things step by step, right? Maybe it would have
Yeah.
been. But I think a lot of investors we met during that entrepreneurial journey, they
Okay.
asked us, me and my partner, why are you trying to do what a geo is trying to do,
Uh,
right?
okay.
Geo is spending 250,000 right? Whatever, followed by many, many zeros.
Crores, yeah.
And small bunch of, right, people who want to change the world. How can you take on somebody like that? So that was quite revealing, because I think you need to live within your means was the kind of thing, right? Unless you have that, right?
Yeah.
So now whoever comes to me for advice, I say, do something which you can do, right?
Yeah.
Rather than trying to go to the Himalaya, you need to take smaller
Yes,
hikes,
yes.
right? And then that's,
Yeah, good analogy. So, since you've been hinting at different transitions in
mhm.
your career and life,
Yeah,
after particularly what you said now, as a startup, you pretty much have to roll up your sleeves and do everything, which is more an
yeah,
action-oriented role.
sure.
How did the transition to being a coach happen, or how did you take it?
Yeah,
Where you
uh,
probably don't,
sure.
you may be itching to do things, but then you probably have to hold yourself back, right?
Correct, correct. Yeah. So I think this is a very good question, Shiv. I think there's a story behind every question you're asking, right?
Yeah, that's good. It's
So,
software people stories. Yeah, more stories, the better.
yeah. So I did mention about getting whatever, going through a program at Harvard, right, which was a revealing thing. It helped me get a big picture of things, business, global, etc. And
Mm.
as a result of that, I became an alum of the Harvard Business School, and
Okay.
did do have number of events every quarter in Bangalore. Number of professors come, and then,
Mm.
right, they're on the board of several companies. Whenever they are in the city, they will have a session, and then they talk about something the latest, right, in the business.
Okay.
So one of the professors who was on the board of Mindtree had come, and then while he was addressing us at Taj West End,
Mm.
right? I saw this one, and especially in all these events, you get a cup of coffee and keep talking to people and introducing yourself and do the usual networking, right? There's one gentleman who showed interest in me, and we were chatting, and then he said, "Come." He wanted to smoke. He said, the session is starting in 5 minutes. Let
Yeah.
me
Okay.
finish a smoke." Then he took me to the corner, and while we were chatting, and then it happened that he is the chairman. He's no more now. He is
Oh.
the chairman of Coaching Foundation India,
Okay.
Pradipta, right?
Uh-huh.
So he was a big guy in RPG. He was the chairman of CII South and so on. So he
Okay.
took me aside and said, "We have this national conclave of the
Mm-hmm.
Coaching Foundation India happening next month in November. Would you
Mm.
like to attend? This
Mm-hmm.
might be of interest to you." I said,
Mm.
"Gladly," right?
Mm-hmm.
I had read about their press release way back in April of 2010, before I
Okay.
had left HCL, and so that triggered my mind. So I
Okay.
said, I gave my email ID, my business card, and then he sent me an invite. I attended that. There I got to see how coaching is done, and that was the
Mm.
first time I got exposure to coaching.
Uh-huh.
And I think the reason I wanted to do a program in coaching itself was like, even in Infosys or HCL, or whenever there was stressful situations, right,
Mm.
where you wanted to take a particular decision, or you don't know who you want to speak, who you can speak to, right? Because the corporate world is a jungle, right? You can't tell your problems to, certainly not your bosses, to your direct reports, right, to your peers, and certainly not to your family members, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
you're kind of lost. So you need some opening where you can express, right,
Yeah.
what you're going through, and
Mm.
then seek some guidance in a non-threatening environment, because
Mm.
they act in a confidential way. One, second is they're not part of, you don't see them every day, right?
Right. Mm.
So you discuss that problem with somebody, and then you see them once a year or once in a few months. It's
Mm.
okay, you're more free to share rather than your neighbor or somebody you're seeing every day.
Yeah.
So that was one. And then Vineet Nair, as part of the HCL management development programs, right? He had a program called Top Gun in 2008,
Mm.
where he
Mm.
had chosen 40 of the senior people to
Mm-hmm.
go through a coaching program. And
Mm.
we had Anil Sachdeva do that
Okay.
for us. And there I had a coach who was the CEO and MD of one of the Unilever companies in South Africa. So he was my
Okay.
coach. He used to meet
Uh-huh.
me every month for a couple of hours. He met me about 8 times. So that gave
Okay.
me that also had given me insight into what is this coaching about, right? I was not
Uh-huh.
totally blind. So
Okay.
two, three things. One is that HCL Top Gun kind of undergoing coaching. Second
Mm.
is my need to have been coached at Infosys or HCL, where I could have probably performed 10 times better if I had a coach, right? So
Mm.
that was the second thing. Third was that serendipitous conversation with Pradipta Mahapatra, right?
Yeah.
And the invite to the National Conclave. I think these three led me to move into coaching, and then applied to the next cohort, got admitted. And then 2011, I attended about 2 weeks of training in Chennai, then did an 8 week of internship. And after that, every year I've been coaching a couple of people to keep myself abreast, not necessarily as a practice, but to practice the things I've learned. And though things have evolved, I also attended a couple of coaching conferences conducted by the Harvard Medical School. So it gives insight into how coaching is done in India, how coaching is done outside. And coaching as an industry, I think will pick up a lot in the next decade here. And I think in the US, people are more open to coaching because they feel that it's an investment, right? So here, I think hopefully in the short time, people will think it is an investment. So if I were to join as the CEO of any company tomorrow, right, I would straight away hire a coach and say I would pay him whatever X lakhs. So that way it is my whatever, one of my factors for success in this new role, right?
Yeah.
I would do that. So as more and more people get open to doing that, I think that practice will also bloom.
Yeah, that's a very nice way of saying it, because here, right from school, we say that if you're going to a coaching class, it used to be considered as additional pressure, or you're not coping up, or the coaching itself is not considered more as a performance enhancer or a booster, but rather filling some deficiency.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as part of the coaching foundation also, Shiv, another story is as part of the Viva, right? Pradipta and the panel asked me, why did you choose coaching? Almost the same exact question you had. So I think my answer started off saying my father actually was born in 1925 in his village in North Karnataka. He migrated to Bangalore in the 1940s after spending some time in freedom struggle. He was a self-made man, right? He was the first person to come from the village to Bangalore. He was a journalist, a poet, a social worker. He was in politics for a brief while. He was a great poet also. So he, since he was the first person from his part of the world to come to Bangalore, right? Anybody who came to Bangalore, any budding journalist, any budding poet, right? Any young social worker, they would come to him for guidance. So he would spend hours and hours together telling them what to do, correct their work and all that, without getting any credit for that, right? So in the sense, so I told Pradipta and the team there that I want to be an influence on people, and nobody need to say I caused them to be successful. As long as you ask some tough questions and it gives them a trigger, right, using which they can do well, right? Coaches are always people behind, right? They are not always in the forefront, and not everybody can become a coach, right? The most successful business person or sports person may not necessarily be a coach or a good coach, right? Because it needs a different kind of flair. And I think one of the stories in one of the conclaves, again, coaching conclaves, I heard the captain of the Indian hockey team, Vic, right? He said his coach used to ask him, see, there are all these Australian yellow shirts and you are playing in the middle and you can see there's no right hindrance to go to the goal.
Okay.
So he was saying when all yellow shirts are around you, you can only see yellow shirts and you don't see the goal, right? You're sitting up there and you can see that there's a goal there. So it is like when you're too close to the business or too close to something, right? It's very difficult for you to see what is happening, right? For somebody outside of that, or like people say, take a step back, right? So if you take a step back and look at that same situation, you will see, right, where the whatever the gaps to the goal are. When you are on the field, it's little difficult.
Yeah, good. So what are your interests nowadays?
Shiv, nowadays what I'm doing is I'm also a mentor with the NSRCEL at IIM Bangalore. So I take part in one-on-one mentoring sessions, which is there every Friday. End up meeting 3 to 4 young ventures, right? And it's a 45-minute session. We hear them and give them guidance on what they should do better, be it on the prototype, be it on how to get their first customer, or how to do their pricing, or whether they are too early in the market, whether they don't have a core team yet at all, right? Each one has a different set of, so that is one thing. And there are a number of other initiatives at NSRCEL. There's a women startup program, women entrepreneurship program called uh, Goldman Sachs Women's 10,000 program, where there's a movement to train 10,000 business women, right? In terms of, they are people who are doing 30 lakhs plus revenue per year, but teach them some of the basics of marketing, sales, how to do business plan, how to scale, and so on, right? And I'm also part of the Texas Instrument India Innovation Design Contest, which happens every year for lakhs of college students. So I'm part of the jury of some of these, a mentor in some of these, and some of the companies who come there or otherwise ask me to advise. So I meet them once a month and right, tell them on what they should do based on whatever limited experience I have. Right. So that is one way which keeps me busy. The second is I go for a long walk in the morning, try to do yoga at least maybe once a week or once in a few weeks. And of course, do reading, watch movies on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things which keep me busy. And one last thing is 2008, we started a school, a high school in my father's village. It's called Hire Kumbalagunte, which is my middle name, Harsha Hire Kumbalagunte Mutt. So in that village, we donated 3+ acres of land to the state government run high school. So they put up a nice building there and the school runs. That school had a 100% result this year. So that
Wow, congratulations.
makes me proud. And looking at this, we decided we want to build a school in my mother's village, which is about 100 kilometers from Bangalore, between Tumkur and Chitradurga. And where there we are building a primary school now. It started in March, should have been finished by June next year. Because of the pandemic, it's little delayed, but looks like we'll still make that June deadline. And next year classes, when it starts, should be able to start in that new building. So these are kind of things which keeps me busy also.
Oh, very, very nice. Since you spoke about transitions and you also are talking about now helping others, guiding them, etc. One of the frequent questions that we get, which I normally ask every guest, is about what do you think is the future of a career in IT, either for somebody who is considering entering the profession, or there is a lot of anxiety in people who are in the, say, middle management level or the mid-career kind of a crisis.
Sure.
Should I grow? Can I grow? Or would I be redundant, whether it is technology or I'm not? Because one thing that you mentioned multiple times is about being a lifelong learner. And every time you always looked at opportunities to learn. So how can one kind of build that into one's way of working?
Sure. I think these are great questions. I see this question in two parts, right? One is what can a fresh engineer moving into IT, right? How can they look forward to, right? And the second is a crisis of a middle level manager. I think my perspective on this would be, if you are joining the workforce now, right? As I mentioned earlier, do whatever is given to you and try to have depth, right? So you need to do a lot more than what is asked for you, and try to learn quickly, and then be on top of any one technology, right? Earlier, my question also used to be to a lot of the junior people who would come to me and say, I worked in mainframe for 2 years, I'm bored, right? I want to do .NET, I want to do Java. Then what do you know about mainframe? They'll say nothing, right? Correct. Meaning, so unless you develop the depth in one field, right, it's very difficult to move on to something else. It need not be something exotic, right? Not everybody can do some object-oriented programming or some mobile product, right? So whatever is given to you, do well and build that expertise in that one technology. Because once you know one database, right, it's very easy to learn something else. Then what you are doing is comparing and contrasting. Right?
Yeah, transferable skills. Yeah.
Correct. And when I had to do the first project for a retailer in the US, this was all IMS databases. And I had no clue about IMS and hierarchical database. I had to interact with the DBA, and I knew DB2 reasonably well, right? Including tuning and all of that. So I had conversations with the IMS DBA, comparing, thinking of in terms of DB2, and maybe ask him questions, and then he would teach me without him thinking he's teaching me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have depth in one field or one technology, and you have the maturity to ask the right questions, you can learn others rather quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a jack of all, then it's probably not a good thing. So whatever
Okay.
one field, right, being it mobile, being testing only or automated testing, there's a lot to do in that field because the field itself is vast, right? So
Mm-hmm.
pick that one, whether you like it or not, develop that expertise, and then you can move on to something else. And
Okay.
don't look at what your friend or neighbor is doing because each one gets a different kind of project, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so that is,
Yeah.
I don't know if that kind of helps the fresh engineer, right?
Yeah.
Go with an open mind and do the best. And for some mid-level manager, I think the problem with today's world is personal value add, right? That's one of the things I also heard a lot from my managers at HCL, right? Because when you are leading a large team, right, you might be doing $500 million of business. But the questions I got in HCL was, your team did $500 million of business. What did you do? Correct? So a lot of times you grapple with what exactly. You cannot say, I coached the team and I had meetings, I did reviews, I energized them, right? This all become motherhood statements. So you need to have something which is a unique contribution that you can do, right? I think now it's the days of specialization, right? So if you're a generalist, I think the days are numbered. And I think I know some of my family friends who live in the US. They are like in the business intelligence space. They are deep gurus in Microsoft technologies, right?
Okay.
So when they go to meet a client, they charge $400 per hour, but they get work only for 6 hours a week, right?
Okay.
Because their expertise is honored and they can
Yeah.
do something a person will take 3 months in 3 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have that expertise, there is always more satisfaction and more demand. And Shiv, you also saw, right? I think the projects we did in HCL, where we had DBAs, right? DB2 DBAs in Germany, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They are like
Yeah.
65 years and then still you pay some hundreds of euros
Yeah.
per hour. And then the specialization always has a demand. So I think that, I think moving away from technology has a downside. Being a pure
Okay.
aggregator, pure manager, I think those days are numbered. So I think you need to have, I think, get your hands dirty. I think that's one of the things I also found while working for startups, right? If you're hiring for a large corporate, you look for years of experience, right? Reference check and all that. But when you come to a startup and hiring for even a CXO in a startup, that CXO has to do the work. He can't say, I will
Yeah.
hire 2 more people, right?
Right.
Moment you say, I'll hire a team, right? Then you'll just say, next, right? So you want somebody who will roll up his sleeves, do the work. And I played the role of CFO at Lookup Media. I had to go into Tally and then, right, do all the kind of reconciliations, right, check the vouchers. You have to do whatever is needed. You can't say, I'll hire some CA to do this or I'll hire a team of 4 more people to do this. You can do that, but the thing is that respect of the team for you goes up only when you can show them how you can do it, right?
Yeah.
So if you can show them how to do it, then they know that they cannot bullshit and say it will take 3 days when you can actually show them this is the way you can do it in 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I think it gains you respect, and they also would love to work with you because they learn a lot, right? It's
True.
a win-win in multiple ways. So
Yeah.
message to the managers would be get to work on specialization, right? That would be one thing. And second thing is continue to read about leadership, read about the latest trends and stuff like that, because that is a key thing. Because I think one of the messages I've got from all the books I've read is that what is the difference between me, Harsha, today versus what I was when I joined HCL in 2006 would be two things. One is the number of books I have read and the ideas I have got. Books you can replace with videos, whatever else, and the people you met. So the different people you meet and the different books and new ideas you get, these are the ones which change a person. So network more, right? Interact with more people. That way, I think my move from Infosys to HCL, I had a LinkedIn of probably 50 people with same DNA when I moved to HCL. And now I have 2000 plus people across various
Wow.
kind of things. And I also learned how Tata Burrows, Tata Unisys started with colleagues like you, right? I got to understand the history of Indian IT and stuff like that. Earlier, you had one perspective, now you get a little more global perspective, and I think it helps to learn or understand people more, and then I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, true that. I definitely learned a lot, including a few very interesting things about you, which didn't come up earlier. And I'm sure there are a lot more questions, a lot more topics that we can talk about. I have written down a few more points, either
Sure.
over a coffee or hopefully we'll be able to go for a walk and then talk about these things.
Sure.
Or maybe another episode. For this episode, I guess we are just about time. So thanks a lot, Harsha, for taking the time and sharing your story.
Sure.
I'm sure that your transitions and your own learnings will be very useful for our listeners.
Yeah, thanks, Shiv. I think I gave a perspective of my experience, right? Good, bad, or ugly, that is what it is. And if this helps any of the listeners here, it's certainly welcome. And if any of them want to reach me one-on-one, I'm more than welcome. They can connect with Shiv and then find me on LinkedIn or Facebook and get in touch with me. Thanks a lot, Shiv.
Yeah, thank you.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Malavika for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.